Welcome back to the Shuffle Squad. This is Zach Lesage here. Today we're going to be covering over my competitive buy list for Twilight Masquerade, the newest set available, or technically not available in English yet, but it is coming out fairly soon. This set's going to be legal for the North American International Championships in New Orleans, and it's certainly going to shake up the metagame more than most people expected. How this video is going to work out is I'm going to share information on all of the competitive cards from the set. So I'm going to go from the justinbasil.com translations. Shout out to Justin Basil, by the way. I always use them for my translations. And I'm going to be going through every single card that I think is playable. So if you want to learn about the kind of cliff notes, the highlights of this set, this is what you want to be listening in the background while you work, while you drive around, or just while you're chilling at your desk supporting the Shuffle Squad. I'm also going to provide the buy list afterwards of what I would buy from this set. Now, since making this portion of the video, some of my opinions have changed on cards such as Dragapult EX. So when in doubt, buy the cards that you think are worthwhile from this set. And if you don't want to buy a card from a set, that's cool too. I can only give you recommendations based off of my 20 plus years of competitive standard playing or anything else like that. That being said, we got a lot of ground to cover here, so let's jump into the best cards from Twilight Masquerade that you should be buying for competitive Pokemon. Twilight Masquerade releases late May, and with Secret Rares, there's around 200 cards that we're going to get in our English sets. After reading through some of the new translations that I've seen either on social media or just through reading through the translations, there's certainly some cards that are exciting. One of the cards that kind of caught my eye to start things off is going to be in order of the set is for the translations was Ariados. I'm not sure if this is a card that I think is actually good or not, but it says your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost is colorless more. Doing grass, for a grass energy, it does 10 plus, does 30 more damage for each colorless in your opponent's active Pokemon retreat cost. We've seen a few attacks like this and a few abilities like this over and over. Ariados could be like interesting in a control build if you could just bring something active. There's a lot of Professor Turo and Prime Catcher and stuff in the format, so I'm not sure. Really where I think things start to kick off is the Sunflora. So Sunflora is its main attack is going to be Sunshine Return, doing 60 times damage. This attack does 60 for each fire energy attached to all of your opponent's Pokemon. I think that if your opponent's playing a Charizard deck and they have 3 fire energies attached to them, you're doing 60, 60, 60. 180 damage times 2 for weakness. So adding in a 1/1 Sunflora could actually be kind of cool to try to beat Charizard, one of the best decks in formats. And I'm sure it could be like played in the right kind of deck. Not sure if it's going to see a lot of play, but it is really one of those cards where it's got to be good in some cases. Volbeat is up next, and this card might just be bad, or it might just be like a little too niche. Same thing with the Illumise, but Volbeat does colorless fast sign. If you go first, you can use this attack on your first turn. So being able to go first and using this on your first turn, search your deck for 2 basic Pokemon and put them onto your bench. So we see a lot of decks that are playing Cleffa. We're probably going to see some of the new Tatsugiri. Volbeat could be a card that we're going to attach an energy to and use fast sign, getting out basic Pokemon, guaranteeing that we can evolve them during our next turn. So for some decks that want to go first, something like Volbeat could actually be pretty cool here. Illumise has Slowing Perfume, so you can only use this attack if you go second, and only during your first turn. You could shuffle one of your opponent's bench Pokemon and all cards attached to it into their deck. So let's say you're playing against an Arceus deck, and they've gone Arceus V, Double Turbo Energy. You could shuffle your opponent's bench Pokemon back into their deck, or even a Chen Pao deck that has only 1 Frigibax out. You could shuffle the Frigibax back, essentially nulling their first turn and gaining an advantage. I think both the Volbeat and Illumise are interesting enough cards to pick up a copy of each. Do I think they're going to see the most competitive play? No. Do I think that these cards could win the World Championships? Sure. Grass becomes a little bit weaker over time, but then we get one of these more interesting cards, and it's Thwackey. So Thwackey has an ability called Boom Boom Drum. It says once during your turn, if your active Pokemon has the Festival Lead ability, you may search your deck for a card and put it into your hand. So maybe there's a way for us to utilize a Festival Lead Pokemon. There's a few of these Pokemon in general. We might be in a situation where we have some kind of deck that's brewing or something in general. Just to kind of give a little bit of a back explanation, there's a few cards that have the Festival Lead ability. It's kind of the thematic deck, if there was one, from this set. And basically that ability allows them to, if there's a festival stadium in play, they can attack twice. They can't use the technical machines. They can't do anything else like that. So I found their attacks are a little bit weaker, but they're actually doing okay in city leagues. Thwacky would be the main source of these decks being able to search things out. See, the next card we're going to go look at is Diplin. So, ability, Festival Lead, and it's a stage 1. So this is a Pokemon evolving from Applin. If Festival Grounds is in play, you may use any attack it has twice. And if you knock out your opponent's active, you can attack again. Attacking twice is cool, only if the attacks are good. This attack does grass 20 times for each of your bench Pokemon. So if you have 5 bench Pokemon, you're doing 100. But like, let's say you're grass type, so you can knock out a Charizard if you attack them twice. At that point, I'd rather probably just play Iron Leafs. That's just me, but we'll have to see how that ends up playing out. Iron Leafs is the next card that we got here. Not the EX that we had from Temporal Forces, but it has grass, colorless, 100 plus 60 if any of your Pokemon were knocked out by damage from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon during your last turn. This is a type of card that I'd probably play in a Lost Zone box deck if I wanted to have an answer to one of our grass weak decks. So maybe this is enough to respond to a Roaring Moon EX. Maybe we have a damage modifier that allows us to knock out a Charizard EX. I think they're interesting. It's interesting, and it's like a card that I want to have on me, like in my binder, or I carry my cards in Ultimate Guard Omni Hives. That's how I travel around. So that's a card that I just want to own at least one of, because I could see myself playing a tech and a challenge or something like that. Next semi-interesting cards are going to be Poltergeist. This card looks so cool, by the way. Not just because I like drinking matcha tea, but I've also been a huge fan of Sinistcha, and I like that they're kind of playing around with these. So, as ability, Store, House, Hideaway, as long as this Pokemon is on your bench, prevent all damage from and effects of attacks from your opponent's Pokemon done to this Pokemon. Certainly not the worst. And it evolves into either Sinistcha or Sinistcha EX. So Sinistcha does put 4 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way you like. And its attack is Spill the Tea, discard 3 basic grass energies from your Pokemon in play. You do 70 for each card you discard in this play, or in this way. So we have some ways, again, at knocking out Charizards. We have some grass support in the set. That's really cool. Is it going to work? We're going to have to find out. And we have Sinistcha EX, so reciprocity, it's a tough word to pronounce, okay? Reciprocity, for each basic grass energy in your discard pile, put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. You have to choose the same Pokemon and then shuffle those back into your deck. So if you have 10 energies in there, you're doing 200 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. That can be kind of cool, and we've seen other attacks like this on Victini Prism, doing 20 for each energy you shuffle back in. Sinistcha EX could actually be okay. I don't know how good it's going to be, but we'll see. Now we get into one of the other main themes of the set, which is the Ogerpon Pokemon. So, Teal Mask Ogerpon says, search your deck for up to 2 basic energy cards, reveal them, and put them into your hand. Whatever, meme attack, not really great, but like, it is what it is. Ogre Comeback does 20 plus 20 for each of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Again, I think these are some interesting grass Pokemon that I'd probably want to Mirage Gate something towards, or maybe it's a fine attacker because we are able to put on a damage modifier, knock out a Charizard. That could be interesting. We also have the Teal Mask Ogerpon EX. So once during your turn, you may attach a basic grass energy card from your hand to this Pokemon. If you attach any energy to a Pokemon in this way, draw a card. I think that's kind of interesting because we have a way to accelerate energies to our Teal Mask Ogerpon. Maybe we could use these to get energies in play for Iron Leafs and kind of bust forward active, knocking out a Charizard. I feel like all these, it's just grass Pokemon that we're talking about. So Charizard's going to be threat numero uno. Like, we are trying to knock out Charizard EX. Its attack is grass, 30 plus for each energy attached to both active Pokemon. Very similar to Espathra. We have a way to accelerate energies to ourselves. It's grass type. You got to play it in a grass type deck. We are able to draw some cards. It's all right, and I think it's going to be good at pre-release, but I also think it could be good in competitive gameplay. There's also some kind of Ogerpon deck with I think it's a Mask of Change Trainer, so I'll cover that over in a little bit. Fire energy, or the fire type Pokemon, are not necessarily as strong to start off the gates, but we are going to see Macargo EX, which has a glimmer of hope. Going fire colorless for 140 damage. Each player discards the top card of their deck. It does 140 for each energy card discarded in this way. We have cards like Cypher Maniac, so we could put cards on top of our deck. That means we could do 280 for 3. If we do discard an energy from our opponent's deck, we are going to be hitting for 420 damage, which is enough to score a huge knockout on something. Is Macargo EX that great? Honestly, we're going to have to determine how that works out. And we're also going to have to find some ways to power up this Pokemon. Infernape is another one of these cards where it's like, I think it's good, but the cards that I think are good are also stemming from playing the game for 20 years. We're also in a super aggressive kind of format where you could be at a 330 HP Charizard EX turn 2. So having 140 HP Infernape, just accelerating energy is alright. So you can attach a basic fire and fighting, or one of each from your hand to your Pokemon in any way you like. That's really all I like this card for. Maybe there's a way to accelerate some energies to some awesome Pokemon. Something like that Macargo EX could get powered up. We'll have to see if Infernape is actually going to be the real deal, but we certainly have ways between energy retrieval, superior energy retrieval, Earthen Vessel to make Infernape have a chance here. Chandelure is probably the next card in this set, and I think it's interesting, where its ability is Inviting Light. Once during your turn, you may use this ability, each player draws a card. This is a forced draw card, meaning it's not you may draw a card. So if you're like, hello opponent, draw a card, they have to draw a card, meaning there's an opportunity for you to play this in like a control deck. Your opponent draws a card, and you might be able to deck them out. Certainly some opportunities here with Chandelure that could be sneaky. And I think in a control build, it could certainly be interesting. I've looked through, there's a Chi-Yu in this set. I'm not sure if I like it. It does fire, colorless, 60 plus 60 if there's a stadium in play. Maybe if something's weak to fire, but it's probably mid. I don't even know if it's worthwhile to include. But if you're a Chi-Yu fan, go off. Hearthflame Mask Ogerpon EX. These are some big names. So, fire, colorless, 20 damage times for each damage counter on this Pokemon. I don't know how we're going to get some damage counters on this Pokemon, but we'll have to find some kind of way. Maybe there's an Ogerpon that we could transform that had more HP. Not sure. Fire, 140 plus. If your opponent's active is an evolution, this is 140 plus 140 and discard all energies. Again, I'm not sure how I feel about this. I think it's like okay, and maybe if there's an Ogerpon deck, that'd be all right. But I'm not sure if there will be. It seems like we're still missing some pieces here. Next up for our festival lead Pokemon is going to be Goldeen. So it can attack again if it wants, and it does colorless 10. Flip a coin if it has discard an energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. Reading Goldeen at first, I was like, maybe there's some control elements that I might be missing when it comes to Goldeen. Flipping a coin twice is not necessarily where I want to be at. And maybe it's better to be playing this with Crushing Hammers and ways to bring back Crushing Hammers. I'm not sure. Like, that's really where I'm at, where I'm like, I'm stuck on Goldeen. Not sure if it's going to be the best, but we'll have to find out. Jinx was kind of cool, where it's colorless, Inviting Kiss, search your deck for a basic Pokemon, put it onto your bench and shuffle your deck, then move an energy from this Pokemon to that Pokemon. I like Jinx as a potential setup Pokemon, where we could build up something onto our bench, baton pass the energy from the Jinx. An Arceus deck might want to play Jinx, because we can increase our chances of getting Arceus V quite substantially. We continue to scroll down. Milotic is another interesting ability. Your opponent's Pokemon in play, and any cards attached to those Pokemon can't be put into your opponent's hand. No more Professor Turo, no Scoop Up Cyclone. Serenity is certainly a cool ability, and I could see this seeing some amount of success. Again, not 100% sure. Frostlass is another kind of water-type Pokemon. During your Pokemon checkup ability, put 1 damage counter from each Pokemon in play with an ability, except any Frostlass. Maybe there's a world where I don't think it says if it needs to be in the active, so we got out a few Frostlass. Maybe there's an opportunity here to do some damage counters to our non-Frostlass Pokemon, and really start spreading things around. I like that at least as a potential idea. We have some interesting ideas here when it comes down to it. There is the Palafin EX, which we have seen been making some rules here, on Twitter. So its ability is Hero Spirits. Put this Pokemon in play only with the effect of Palafin 0 to the hero ability. That's the only way to summon it, and they've made it very clear that that's the only way to summon it based off the rules team. Throw out anything off the window. There's no way to Salvatore it. There's no way to... Not that you could Salvatore it, but you know what I'm saying? Like, there's just no way to summon the Palafin EX except from Palafin 0 to hero. Palafin 0 to hero says once during your turn, when this Pokemon moves from the active spot to the bench, you may search your deck for a Palafin EX and switch it with this Pokemon. Any attached card, blah, 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 is on this Pokemon. Then shuffle the Palafin with 0 to hero back from play. Palafin EX is interesting because it's a Stage 1 Pokemon with 340 HP, and it does 250 damage for a single energy. Is it going to be worthwhile? Honestly, I'm not sure, but it seems cool enough that I'm willing to try it out. It's interesting. Walking Wake is another card that I think is cool because it has Water Colorless, 20 damage times the amount of damage counters you put on this Pokemon. For each damage counters, you put 20 here. So we can put 9 damage counters onto Walking Wake and hit for 180 damage as a single prize card Pokemon. It's also damage, not damage counters. So if something's weak to water in the future, it could be cool. We have Wellspring Masked Ogerpon EX up next, doing Water Colorless, 100 damage. You may shuffle 3 energies attached to this Pokemon into your deck. If you do, it does 120 to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So maybe if we're able to transform from the Grass Ogerpon into this Wellspring Ogerpon and grab some of those energies, move them along, Torrential Pump, 100 plus 120 snipe, certainly would not be terrible. Luxray EX is another card that's kind of taking Twitter by storm because for colorless, it does 120 damage. Your opponent reveals their hand, choose a card you find there, and discard it. Being able to play this in combination with a Roxanne or in combination with Eerie and then going with Piercing Glare, like there's certainly some opportunities. And I think there's also a Unfair Stamp A-Spec. So we can Unfair Stamp A-Spec, hit our opponent, then hit them with Piercing Glare. They could be in a lot of trouble if this ends up working out. With a few spreading cards in this set, Emolga is a card that I'm also considering. It's just like playable. Free Retreat, 60 HP, Buddy Profitable, colorless, 10 damage. This attack also does 10 damage to each bench Pokemon, both yours and your opponent's. If you have a Manaphy in play, I'm not sure if Manaphy prevents it actually. I need to double check Manaphy. I'm sure as it gets edited we'll find out, but that usually prevents bench. I'm not sure if it's from your opponent. But either way, we can have a low bench and then prepare for whatever we want. Emolga being able to spread could be kind of cool. That's kind of it until we get to more Peko. Its ability is kind of cool because we have Snack Search. Once during your turn, you may look at the top card of your deck. You may discard that card. I think about decks like Ancient Box where I'm like, I might be able to get an extra 10 damage every once in a while. Maybe there's some other deck like the Roaring Moon, the Dunsparce deck, a Lugia deck where you want to knock out a Chops. You might want to discard an Energy so you can Professor Seda. Like, there is some opportunities. And for Lightning, it does attach 2 basic energy cards from your discard pile to your Pokemon in any way you like. Morpeko seems like it's like has the makings of a solid card at the very least. As we scroll through, there's not really much until we get to Iron Thorns EX. So it's good to know that not every single card in this set is competitively viable. I almost like that there's a little bit of filler, considering I feel like we just got Temporal Forces, and we're also getting this set again. And it's right before NEIC, and then it's only legal really for NEIC because we're getting another set before Worlds. So Iron Thorns EX says, as long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, Pokemon with Roblox in play have no abilities, except future Pokemon. So shutting off Pidgeot EX, Barrel, etc., could be really awesome, and then doing 140 damage for Lightning colorless. Move an energy from this Pokemon to one of your bench Pokemon. And probably that's going to be another Iron Thorns EX, so we can continuously do Bolt Cyclone over and over again. It's interesting. An ability lock is something that we don't have a lot of. We lost Path to the Peak, so there could be some opportunities there. Abra is interesting. It's a card that I've also thought about picking up. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon's in your active spot, you may shuffle it and all cards attached to it into your deck. When we think about a lot of control decks, maybe we have some with free retreats, and we can use Abra to avoid decking outs every single turn. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case, and maybe there's a better option, but Abra does have a way to kind of make sure that we're never decking out of anything in our deck, and we can always just put Abra back into our deck after with Teleporter each turn. There are some opportunities to test out some things, such as Florges. Captivating Temptation says once during your turn, you may flip a coin. If heads, switch in one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active spots. The new Pokemon's confused. If you read this by flipping a coin, you could play a boss's orders and confuse your opponent's active Pokemon. Considering 1-0-1 lines are semi-popular again in Pokemon, or thin lines of Stage 2 Pokemon, where we could just play a Flabebe and we could play a Florges, we might be able to have infinite boss, or at least the opportunity for it. Or maybe you're playing a control deck and you play a couple Florges and you're going to Captivating Temptation instead of playing Counter Catcher. Certainly a unique card that I'd want to consider picking up. Next up is Swirlix. Again, a Festival lead Pokemon. So you can put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon, attack, use it again. Again, if the attack was spread 4 as a single Pokemon, I'd be like, yeah, this is maybe okay. The fact that it's like the same thing, but we need to have Festival lead in play, I'm not sure if I'm going to necessarily get to all those placements of what I want to. Screamtail EX is a card that I think is mid, but maybe it's better. You can only use this attack if you go second, and only during your first turn. During your opponent's next turn, they can't play supporter cards from their hand. Maybe we have a way to just completely kind of like slow down our opponents, Turo this back, or maybe your opponent doesn't get a knockout, and we slow them down and they just lose or something like that. Maybe. It's like kind of cool. Speaking of newish Pokemon, or a Pokemon that I didn't even know that existed, is Monkey Dory. If this Pokemon has any dark energy attached to it, you can use this ability. Once during your turn, you can move 3 damage counters from one of your Pokemon to one of your opponent's Pokemon. Not sure if that's ever going to be super relevant, because getting the dark energy on Monkey Dory could be tough, but being able to kind of heal your Pokemon and do some damage to their right ones, yeah, sure, it's got to be good to some degree. Its attack's not really where it's at, but it's all right. One of the better cards that we're going to be seeing here is Pheasantipity. It's another one of these Pokemon. I'm like, when did I get too old that I don't know all the Pokemon? Probably when I didn't play the DLC pack of Scarlet Violet, but that's on me. Any damage onto this Pokemon by attacks, and this Pokemon has any dark energy, flip a coin if heads prevent that damage. I don't know if we're going to get to the dark energy on it. Maybe we will, and it could be an interesting tech card, but we're really looking at this card for Energy Feathers, doing 30 damage for each energy attached to this Pokemon. Considering we lost Gardevoir from Chilling Reign for our Gardevoir EX deck, Pheasantipity looks like a solid replacement, and I could see it, a couple copies of this being added to Gardevoir right away. Other cards that we're going to be looking at, or it's going to be in the fighting section, is Greninja EX, the Terra type. Water Energy, 170, search your deck for a card and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. Certainly not bad for an attack, especially when we think about like Charizard. Charizard could 2-shot at 180, this could 2-shot at 170, and also searching for other cards, having some consistency. Water Colorless, doing pitching 2 energies from this Pokemon, doing 120 to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon, certainly giving us an opportunity to have a leg up in the competition, and maybe spreading some Pokemon in the right way. I think Greninja X is one of those cards where it's like, I feel like it's good. I'm not sure entirely how good it's going to be, but it's probably going to be good to some degree. Tinglu is another one of these spreading cards where it says Ground Crack. If a stadium is in play, this attack does 30 damage to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon, then discard the stadium. There seems like between Frostlass, Emolga, Tinglu, there's definitely an emphasis on some spreading cards. So maybe this deck has, maybe the set has some opportunities to explore some previous concepts that we saw back in like 2018 when those cards were playable. Okidogi is another one of these new cards. If this Pokemon has any dark energy attached, it gets 100 HP and its attacks do 100 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. That means its good punches not doing 70, it's doing 170, which could be kind of interesting when it comes down to it. I'm not sure if this one's going to be the best between Monkey Dory, Pheasantipity, but Okidogi seems like it could see some success in the future at least. Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon EX, I believe this is our last Ogerpon that we're going to be looking at. Prevent all damage done from attacks done to this Pokemon by your opponent's Pokemon that have an ability. Maybe we have a way to play this in a control deck to slow down our opponent's decks that have an ability the same way that a control deck would play Mimikyu. I could see this maybe working. I'm not entirely sure, but it does 140 just going through straight as a 140. Other cards that are kind of interesting in this set are going to be coming from our Dragon type Pokemon. So really the main card that we're probably going to see in this set, and I didn't see it at first, so when we go through my buy list at the end of this video, and stay tuned for that, you're going to see that I did not put Dragapult EX as one of the must-haves from the set. Japanese City Leagues would tell me that I'm wrong, and I'm okay to admit where I'm wrong when I made my early list. I'm still going to include that early list, but I would probably pick up Dragapult EX more often than not. Dracoloak says, once during your turn, you may look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one of them into your hand, and put the other card at the bottom of your deck. From seeing players play Pidgeot Control in previous seasons, I do think that Dracoloak is very similar to the Pidgeotto that we saw from Team Up. Now, that being able to evolve into Dragapult EX means that we have a built-in draw engine, similar to how Gardevoir decks have Kirlia built-in. So decks like that typically are quite good. Dragapult EX is quite powerful, doing Fire, Psychic, and doing 200 and putting 6 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon wherever you like, on your bench at least. And it's one of those things where maybe we're able to draw multiple prize cards, maybe we're able to isolate certain Pokemon that they're trying to set up. So if you could knock out a Charizard EX and then knock out a Charmander on their bench with 6 damage counters, you're probably feeling pretty good about it. Tatsugiri is probably going to be one of the better cards in this set as well, and it also has a really cool secret illustration rare or illustration rare version of it. Once during your turn, if it's in the active spot, you have to look at the top 6 cards of your deck and find a supporter and put it into your hands. If you pair this with Rescue Board, we certainly have some opportunities to make Tatsugiri the star of the show. And in a similar way to how Charizard decks were playing Mew from Celebrations before, I could totally see them adding in something like Tatsugiri. Blissey EX is another one of these interesting cards from the set. So with its ability Happy Switch, once during your turn, you may move a basic energy card from one of your Pokemon to another one of your Pokemon. And that's maybe enough for you to build up energies with Ogerpon, the grass type one, building up the energies there, moving into Blissey and attacking very quickly, return doing 180, draw until you have 6. We could play this maybe with Turo or Scoop Up Cyclone and really prevent Blissey from ever getting knocked out with its 300 HP. The other big card from this set is probably going to be Blood Moon Ursaluna EX. So its ability Veteran's Technique says this Pokemon's Blood Moon attack costs colorless for each prize card your opponent has taken. So it's very similar to Radiant Charizard, but it makes it very specific for Blood Moon. Blood Moon doing 240 during your next turn. This Pokemon can't attack. We have a 260 HP basic Pokemon that we could play down at any point, and really just kind of attack. And then if our opponent doesn't really do anything, we are set to attack again. Blood Moon Ursaluna certainly looks like it's going to shake things up. Probably going to be the tech of the set and give us some opportunities to see success. There are some cool trainer cards in this set, and the one that I like to start off with is Carmine. So if you go first, you may play this card during your first turn, discard your hand, and draw 5 cards. I could see this being very well positioned in a Lugia V-Star deck. Discard Archeops even on your first turn, really getting towards that win con. So supporters, if you play this on your first turn, or if you have it on your second turn, pitch and draw 5 is a pretty cool effect, and I think it's going to see a lot of success. We do get a reprint of Cook in this set. We have seen this in some control decks before, so it's probably one of those things that you want to go digging through your bulk that you have from previous sets, or just buy the Cook. It's probably going to be like 10 cents. Another reprint that we get is Enhanced Hammer. I know a lot of people are buying the gold version of this from previous sets, and I think we get a gold version in this set too. Discard a special energy attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon. This can certainly be great, especially with cards like Dragapult EX coming out to discard your opponent's Mist energy. Fable Flute says reveal the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck and put any number of basic Pokemon you find there on your opponent's bench. Your opponent shuffles the other cards back into their deck. Similar to how we'd have something to bring something down from your opponent's hand previously, So like Erica's or something that we had like Echoing Horn, Fable Flute might be a great way for us to knock out some 2 prize card Pokemon like Luminion and Rotom. Festival Grounds is the card that's going to pair with those thematic Pokemon in this set, so each Pokemon that has an energy card attached to it can't be affected by special conditions. Remove all the special conditions from those Pokemon. I actually almost like this to remove special conditions from our Pokemon in general, and stadiums can sometimes be useful. We have Hassel, which is another interesting-ish supporter. You can only use this if one of your Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Look at the top 8 cards of your deck and put 3 of them into your hands. I'm not sure what cards I want to put into my hands, but maybe there's an opportunity to use Hassel there. I think cards like this, like it's like a less disruptive Explorer's Guidance kind of, that has a little bit of a bigger reach. Could be cool. We're going to see our first A-Spec of the set, Hyper Aroma. Search your deck for up to 3 Stage 1 Pokemon, reveal them and put them into your hand, then shuffle your deck. Could be great in a Dracalope deck, could be great in a Gardevoir deck. Being able to search those Pokemon, or searching off of an Arven to search out a Hyper Aroma and maybe 4 Sealstone can certainly be a great way to mount a comeback. Jamming Tower is probably going to be my favorite stadium out of this set. Pokemon tool cards in play have no effect, so no more Hero's Cape, no more Max Belts, no more 4 Sealstone. Like, Jamming Tower certainly could be quite cool. So when I think about a card like this, we might see this in some disruptive builds or some mid-disruptive builds like Arceus Giratina decks. Kieran's an interesting supporter because it allows you to have the power of choice. You could switch your active Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon as a supporter-based switch, or you could increase your Pokemon's attacks to do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. Being a damage modifier / switch card really allows you to open up some worlds of deck building where you might have something where you have to play a Switch in a Charizard deck and a Defiance Belt or a Defiance Band. Kieran allows you to maybe get both. Lana's Care is interesting, so put up to any 3 combination of Pokemon that don't have any rule box or basic energy cards from your discard pile into your hands. In the right deck, this could certainly work out great. I also think that something like Ogre's Mask could be good if we're playing a Ogerpon deck. Choose a Pokemon EX in your discard pile that has Ogerpon in its name and switch it with one of your Pokemon EX in play that has Ogerpon in its name. So you could switch an Ogerpon from play with one of the ones that you have in your discard pile, allowing you to have the opportunity to shake things up. We've seen other cards like this with Arceus in the 2009 set Pokemon TCG Arceus. Typically, these thematic cards are not as good as we want them to be, but maybe we'll have to find out and see how it plays out. Scoop Up Cyclone is a reprint from Plasma Blast that says put one of your Pokemon and all cards attached to into your hand. Kind of like a Professor Turo that does not discard the cards as an item card. Scoop Up Cyclone does seem like it's going to see a decent bit of success here. So I've been playing around with it in my Dragapult Charizard deck just to not get knocked out, bring it back, attack again. Kind of giving me an extra turn, so I think Scuba Cyclone certainly adds some interesting elements. There's also Secret Box. You can only play this card if you discard 3 other cards from your hand. Search your deck for an item, a Pokemon tool, and a supporter and a stadium. Reveal them and put them into your hand. So this could get a Charizard deck fully set up if you're missing any of the pieces. There's Survival Brace is another A-Spec. If this Pokemon is cards attached to, it has full HP and would be knocked out by damage from an attack. Your opponent's Pokemon, then this Pokemon is not knocked out. Cards like this scare me because of Jamming Tower and Lost Vacuum, so if it's a card that's sticking in play, you probably want to pair this with a Roxanne. One of the kind of spiritual-esque reprints, Unfair Stamp. You may play this card if one of your Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Doesn't matter if it's by damage, effective attack. If it's long as it's knocked out during your opponent's last turn, that's all cool. Each player shuffles their hand to their deck. You draw 5, your opponent draws 2. This is not a supporter. This is an item card, so Unfair Stamp certainly can bring back some games, disrupt your opponent, and especially paired with some other disruption cards could be fantastic, like Eerie or Luxray. There's 2 cards left in this set, and they're both energies. Boomerang Energy says it belongs to attached to a Pokemon and provides colorless energy. If it's discarded by the effect of an attack by the Pokemon this card is attached to, attach this card from your discard pile to that Pokemon after attacking. Something like Radiant Greninja, if you were to discard an energy from an attack like that, you would be able to get the Boomerang Energy back. Maybe there's going to be some interesting techniques with Boomerang Energy. I'm really going to have to look at some of these other cards that were discarding energies and being like, could Boomerang Energy fit in here? The last card in the set is Legacy Energy, another A-Spec. As long as this card is attached to a Pokemon, it provides every type of energy, but only provides one energy at a time. Once per game, if the Pokemon this card is attached to is knocked out by damage from an attack your opponent's Pokemon, your opponent takes one fewer prize card. So this is a multi-energy, or it's like a rainbow energy with a damage counter, and it's like a life dew, preventing your opponent from drawing an extra prize card. So this means you could play a card like this in a Lugia V-Star deck to be able to power up an Iron Hands now, where there wasn't any other multi-energy available before. We can now power up Iron Hands and use Amp You very much if we really need to, giving us a lot of opportunities for some unique gameplay. All of these cards are available in Twilight Masquerade, and we're probably going to see them released in our English version of the set late May, so stay tuned for them. What I want to go through next here is just covering over my buy list for the set. Again, I do want to say that Dragapult EX is probably a must-have, if not very much a must-have right now, so please factor that in when it comes to looking at these lists. This is what I have for the must-haves from the sets. Like I said, I think I missed the mark on Dragapult EX, and that's a card that I'd include here. To me, it's one of those things where, like, it's got to be good, right? Like, I look at it and I'm like, it's doing very well in Japan. Something like a 1 Volbeat, 1 Illumise might not be as good, but I tried to include everything that I would pick up. So the card that I would pick up here is just going to be adding on is 3 to 4 Dragapult EX as well. Everything else is just like the correct count, in my opinion, on what I would pick up throughout the entire sets. All these cards should be covered in some reason, but if you haven't got a chance to read through them, check out the description for links to Justin Basil's translations for Twilight Masquerade if you want to learn a little bit more about the sets. I think the set's kind of cool, a lot of cool cards in it, but I just screenshot this, bring it over to your local game store, or use it as a guide when you're trying to buy some cards from Kayfabe or trying to open up the set for PTCG Live. And here we also have the playable cards, so the cards that aren't necessarily must-haves, but I think that these are the cards that I'm going to pick up as well. Something like Macargo EX is a card that I just like to own, just in case it becomes very good. And that's where, like, unfortunately, I put Dragapult EX the first time I reviewed the set. After reviewing the set, the second and third time, I've decided that I want it as a must-have. So that's the one change that I'd make to this list, is moving this over to the must-haves. Pick up whatever, again, you need, whatever fits in your budget, whatever you just need in general. And some cards like Ogre's Mask, maybe you want to have 4 of them. I only think you need 2 right now, but I might change my mind. And I've also, like the other day, went to my local game store and bought 20 Charmeleon from Flare Veils. Like, I'm trying to build more than just one deck, so try to pick up the cards, whatever you need from this set as you need them. But this is a general guide that I use. Again, Dragapult as a must-have. And that's what we got going on for this video today. I appreciate everyone who's watched up until this point. I know 35 minute videos are not always everyone's cup of tea, but I do think that there's a lot of information in this one. So if you are trying to play at any tournaments like NAIC, picking up cards for this new set, I hope that it's giving you a competitive advantage, at least understanding why these cards are good and the cards that I'm hyped for. And like anyone else, I'm a Pokemon fan at the end of the day, and I'm ready to build Dragapult. I'm ready to build Blood Moon in some of my decks. Like, I'm always looking for that new deck, that new moment. So hopefully this video has helped you kind of get over that hurdle and pick up some of these cards once they become available for pre-order, or picking them up at your local game store, or our sponsors like Kayfabe and stuff like that. If you want to store all your decks, I recommend my Omnihive. I have this Katana Journey. It holds all my decks, my playmats, my damage counters. I love traveling like with these to my league cups at my league, preparing and storing all my decks as organized as I possibly need it. If you need any help upping your game, or you're trying to prepare a little bit more for the set, I do have decks available for playing on our Limitless tabletop, or playing on any of those other tabletop simulators, for my coaching at metafy.gg/@ZachLassage. So hit me up for that if you're trying to learn a little bit more about the metagame and the upcoming metagame. I'm already preparing for that, so we're there. I don't really have too much else to say, so enjoy the rest of your week, everyone. Stay tuned for more great content from the Shuffle Squad, and I appreciate all the support on the channel lately. Peace out and have a great one. Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG Live codes. You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.